Hey there, YouTube. So, let's talk about what's going on in Ukraine because it's 12:35 in the morning here, and Russia's invading. You remember how Sarah Palin said Putin was going to go into Ukraine next, or go after Ukraine next when he went into Georgia in 2008, and people said she was an idiot? You remember how Romney said Russia was a threat, and Obama came back with 1980s called they want their foreign policy back. Guess what happened in 2014? That should have been the first clue. It's time to stop saying we want to poo-poo into conservatives and start listening. Conservatives pay attention to what they're talking about. So, time to start thinking and not just feeling and being just a bunch of idealists. I got news for you. Some people don't adhere to your same values. The Hate America left, the non-interference principle libertarians, the neocons, they have three things in common. They are not good students of history, they project their values onto other people, and they don't think about the consequences of their actions. Ukraine is toast. Either it will become a puppet state of Russia, or it's going to be conquered by Russia, and then Putin's going to claim it. He's trying to say that Ukraine, the idea of an independent Ukraine is a fiction. And he's even trying to make rumblings about the Baltic states. Talking about the Lithuanian-Russian Commonwealth. Well, there was also a Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth that used to control most all of Eastern Europe, including a chunk of Ukraine. It went all the way down to the Black Sea. You look at its history. A lot of those borders have shifted over time, and no one was ever there forever. However, even more importantly, this needs to become a hard lesson about not being weak, because Biden is weak. He took sanctions off of Russia for some stupid-ass reason. And that showed Putin that he was weak. It should have been very clear. Like Trump or not, and being a Republican, you'd think I'd like Trump. I didn't like him, but you know what he was good at? Convincing people that he was crazy enough that you didn't want to do something like an invasion of Ukraine. That guy might just start pushing buttons, as Tim Pool pointed out. You didn't know what he could do. Might just get pissed off and go ahead and launch. Or he might not. Nobody could know. And that unpredictability, that fear, probably did put Putin going, we might not want to do that. The other big lesson is all you guys that want to sit there and cut the military, whether it's because you want to say, oh, we shouldn't be involved in other places, or because you think America's a horrible country, which you're wrong, please leave, or some of you that think we need to get involved in every fight out there. There's nothing we can do to stop Russia and Ukraine other than to make life economically hard for Russia, and that means we got to stop trade with them. That means Turkey has to say, sorry, we're going to shut off the Bosporus, you're not trading. It means Germany needs to get off of their little addiction to heating everything with Russian natural gas and find a new source. Maybe fire up those nuclear power plants they wanted to shut down. But all you wanted to kill the military, Ukraine cut back its military thinking, oh, NATO will defend us. They weren't NATO members. A lot of NATO members weren't even spending the required 2% of their GDP on their military. That was all. We're spending about 5% of our GDP. Poland, to their credit, is spending, I think, 3.5%. UK is spending about 3% on their. Turkey's spending 3% on their military. But a lot of NATO members, namely the Baltic states, some of them were spending 1%. They're a speed bump if Russia decides to invade there. So, all you guys that think that we don't need that, you got to think about that if you're going to defend Taiwan. You got to think about that if you're going to do these things, because guys like Putin and Xi Jinping, I'm not pronouncing that right, but in China, Chinese leader, They do not adhere to your values. Stop projecting them on there. These guys are strong men. All right? They want power. You need to stop projecting it and realize they're not good guys. They're not just about trade. They want national power. And so stop projecting that. Understand, Putin's a student of more of a student of history than you want to think. Not because he's not trying to repeat it. He's just taking something and letting people calm down. Everyone will freak out over Ukraine. He'll wait and then he'll go after the Baltics or try and get a land bridge to Kaliningrad or grab something else. It will come. And you better stop thinking it's not. Better stop thinking, oh, we don't need the military. Who's going to attack us? Well, if we're going to be part of NATO, we're going to get drug into this crap. Because after Ukraine, it's NATO members that are on his borders. And Putin will go after them. Mark my words. Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania are all next. So saying we don't need 11 aircraft carriers, you might want to rethink that. China may go after Taiwan. I don't think they could do it now because of the amount of logistics and everything they would have to have already in place to do it. They might try intimidation. They might try an airstrike. Try and do it that way, get Taiwan to just fold. But you guys got to understand that you can't just keep cutting the military and go and cut the military and expect not to have consequences. There's going to be a power vacuum if you do that. And someone's going to fill it. Are you going to have the guy that imprisons Uyghur Muslims fill it? Or are you going to have the guy that wants to rebuild the Russian Empire fill it? Who's going to fill that power vacuum that you leave behind? That's called the consequences of your actions in the future. So think long and hard about this. And think about it the next time you vote. Stop thinking that, oh, I just want change, or I just hate this guy so bad, I'm going to vote this other guy in. I'm sorry, but Biden doesn't have the mental faculties anymore to be able to do anything. I'm pretty sure it's just staff running it and he's a figurehead. And his vice president, all she can do is cackle like a hyena. You put an incompetent vice president and a senile man in the presidency because you hated somebody because he was just so terrible. The guy was not perfect. But looking at what we're dealing with now, because if we go in and send troops, I'm going to tell you right now that is a bad idea. In a larger strategic sense, as horrible as I have to say this, and it's cold, and foreign policy is 50 Shades of Gray. I mean, that book could have been title could have been a book on foreign policy, and 50 Shades Darker could have been on black ops, intelligence, and hard power. Ukraine is gone. There's nothing we can do other than maybe give them weapons if they last long enough. That's it. You guys better think long and hard about the consequences of your actions in the future. Because anybody with some sense could have seen it. And just like before World War II, Churchill saw it coming years out. So I don't want to hear anything about Democrats talking about, oh, Trump's a Russian agent, or Republicans like Russia, or Russia wasn't a threat, until you apologize for saying that 1980s called they want their foreign policy back, or saying Sarah Palin was an idiot. They were both a hell of a lot smarter than any of you. For all the conservatives out there, think long and hard about what commitments we make. You can't be going and getting every fight out there, because when you're all bogged down or your military's all wore out from other stuff, you don't have what it takes to fight when you actually have something worth fighting over. Just because there's a fight out there someplace doesn't mean we need to stick our nose into it. But on this one, this is going to put Putin right back up against NATO allies. And just because there's somebody that says they want to be allied with us doesn't mean we need to take them on. Because to a certain extent, that's how World War I started. Remember that thing about studying history? Serbia was all backed up by Russia. That was how they were able to be cocky little POSs when the Archduke Ferdinand got killed. Russia was able to start rattling sabers, and when they got cocky, it started, and then the Austro-Hungarian Empire got involved, and then Russia got involved, and that pulled in Germany, and it turned into World War One. The consequences of stuff we're really still living in. A lot of the borders were drawn then. So it's almost midnight. I had to start this video a second time because Melissa wanted me to just come to bed. But think before you act, and this is the consequences of voting in policies of appeasement. Voting in policies of just getting along or complete non-interference. This is the consequences. Russia conquers Ukraine. That is what happens. You can say that we shouldn't have had other moves. Maybe that's the case. But none of this happens in a vacuum. None of it happens. There's always a chain of events. There was a lot of things Russia could have done to prevent it to begin with. There's things we could have done. But ultimately, this should also be a lesson for all of you that think that an individual country doesn't need to defend. Ukraine had almost no military. They had an army that was poorly disciplined and poorly equipped. Almost no air force. And because they thought, oh, NATO will protect us. NATO isn't. They aren't a NATO member. And now they've been spending 4.6% of their GDP on their military, but it's still not going to be enough. So think long and hard about that. We can all pray for Ukraine, but chances are it's toast as an independent country. That's just the hard, cold reality somewhere in that 50 Shades of Gray. You all have a nice day by the time you see this, because I'm going to bed.